On my wedding day, my childhood friend stood up and yelled, "The groom loves me, not her." But then I showed the screen messages that destroyed her reputation forever. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I never thought I'd be writing this. Even now, 3 months later, my hands are still shaking as I type. But I need to get this out, because what happened at my wedding was so insane that people still don't believe me when I tell them. So, here's the whole story, from the beginning. Sarah and I had been best friends since we were 7 years old. We met on the first day of second grade when she shared her cookies with me at lunch, because I'd forgotten mine. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We had sleepovers every weekend. We learned to drive together. We went to prom as each other's backup dates when our boyfriends turned out to be losers. She was my maid of honor at my college graduation party, and I was hers. She was the sister I never had. When I met David 3 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party, Sarah was the first person I called the next morning to gush about this amazing guy who'd made me laugh until my sides hurt. She squealed with excitement, demanded every detail, and when David and I became official a month later, she threw us a surprise "Congratulations on not being single losers anymore" party in her apartment. Sarah was there for everything. Our first fight, she brought ice cream and wine. Our first vacation together, she helped me pack and insisted I bring the sexy lingerie just in case. And when David proposed last Christmas, she cried harder than my own mother. She was the obvious choice for maid of honor, and when I asked her, she literally tackled me in a hug and said, "I've been waiting for this moment since we were 12 and planning our dream weddings." The wedding planning was a dream come true. Sarah took 2 weeks off work to help me with everything. We tried on dresses together. She was the one who found the dress at a tiny boutique in Brooklyn after we'd been to 15 other shops. She helped me taste test caterers, listened to me debate flower arrangements for hours, and even learned how to do professional level makeup on YouTube so she could be my something borrowed, her skills. She organized my bachelorette party, and it was perfect. A weekend in Nashville with my college roommates and my cousins, complete with pedal tavern tours, honky-tonk bars, and a private karaoke room where we sang our hearts out until 3 a.m. Sarah had even made a custom playlist with songs from every year of our friendship. I remember thinking that night how lucky I was to have someone who knew me so well, who cared enough to put together something so perfectly me. The week before the wedding, she stayed at my apartment every night, helping me with last-minute details. We addressed the final batch of place cards together while binge-watching our favorite show from high school. She helped me break in my wedding shoes by walking around my neighborhood in them every evening. She listened to me practice my vows probably 50 times, offering suggestions and reassurance when I worried they weren't good enough. "David is going to cry," she kept saying. "These are perfect. You two are perfect." I trusted her completely. More than that, I loved her like family. Which is why what happened next hurt so much more than any betrayal from a stranger ever could. October 15th dawned crisp and clear, exactly the kind of perfect fall day I'd dreamed of. The venue was a restored Victorian mansion upstate with gardens that looked like something from a fairy tale. Sarah arrived at 6 a.m. with coffee, bagels, and a bag full of emergency supplies. "Today's the day," she squealed, setting down what looked like a small pharmacy worth of items. "I've got safety pins, stain remover, tissues, breath mints, ibuprofen, tampons, energy bars, and a sewing kit. We are prepared for everything." We spent the morning getting ready with my mom, David's sister Emma, and my 3 other bridesmaids. Sarah had appointed herself the unofficial coordinator, making sure everyone was on schedule, that the photographer got all the shots on my list, and that I ate something substantial. You're going to faint at the altar if you don't eat, and not from love. From low blood sugar. She curled my hair into the vintage Hollywood waves we'd practiced a dozen times. She did my makeup flawlessly, better than any professional I'd tried during our trial runs. She helped me into my dress, carefully arranging the delicate lace sleeves and the cathedral train. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked like a bride from a magazine spread. "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen," Sarah said, and I could see tears in her eyes. "David's going to lose his mind when he sees you." She handed me something wrapped in tissue paper. "You're something new," she said. It was a delicate bracelet with a charm that had our initials intertwined and the date of our friendship anniversary. "So I'm with you even when I'm not right next to you," she explained. I hugged her so tight I probably wrinkled her bridesmaid dress. "I love you so much. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "That's what best friends are for," she said, but something in her voice seemed off. When I pulled back to look at her, though, she was smiling brightly. I figured she was just emotional about the big day. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. in the mansion's garden, with cocktails to follow on the terrace and dinner in the ballroom. As we prepared to walk down the aisle, Sarah squeezed my hand one last time. "Ready to become Mrs. Davis?" she asked. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life," I replied. I should have paid more attention to the look that crossed her face when I said that. The processional was like something from a movie. My bridesmaids walked down the petal-strewn aisle in their sage green dresses, each one looking radiant. Sarah, as maid of honor, went last before me, and she was stunning. She'd chosen a slightly different style dress that perfectly complemented her figure, and her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. Several of David's groomsmen were clearly smitten as she passed. Then came my moment. The string quartet began playing the processional I'd chosen, an acoustic guitar version of At Last, and the guests rose to their feet. I could see David at the altar in his navy suit, and the look on his face was everything I'd dreamed of. Pure joy, love, and awe. He was mouthing "wow" and wiping his eyes, and I felt my own tears starting. My dad walked me down the aisle, whispering, "You look perfect, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you," just loud enough for me to hear. I could see my mom in the front row, crying happy tears. David's parents, who'd become like second parents to me, were beaming. My college roommates were snapping pictures and giving me thumbs up. Everyone looked so happy. The officiant, Pastor Mike from David's childhood church, began the ceremony with a reading about love from 1 Corinthians. David and I had chosen every word of this ceremony carefully, and it was unfolding exactly as we'd planned. We exchanged the rings David's grandmother had designed for us, each one engraved with a line from the song that was playing when we first kissed. We were just getting to the vows, the part I was most excited about, when it happened. "If anyone has a reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." Pastor Mike said it with a smile, the way officiant always do, because no one ever actually objects at weddings. It's just a formality, a tradition. We were all prepared to move on to the good part. That's when Sarah stood up. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. Sarah rose from her place in the front row, smoothed down her dress, and cleared her throat. I thought maybe she had forgotten something, or needed to step out for a moment. The photographer even kept snapping pictures, probably thinking it was a planned part of the ceremony. Then she spoke, and her voice carried clearly across the silent garden. "I'm sorry, but I can't let this happen." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Every head in the garden turned toward her. I felt David's hand tighten around mine, felt the confusion radiating from the altar. Pastor Mike's smile faltered. "Sarah?" I said, my voice small and uncertain. "What are you doing?" She looked directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Something cold and triumphant. "I can't let you marry him when he's in love with me," she announced, her voice growing stronger. "He told me so himself. Last night, actually." The gasps from the guests sounded like a wave breaking. I heard my mother make a small, wounded sound. Someone in the back row whispered, "Oh my God." I looked at David, searching his face for some sign that this was a nightmare, a misunderstanding, anything other than reality. He was staring at Sarah with an expression of complete shock and horror. "Sarah, what the hell are you talking about?" he said, his voice cracking. But Sarah wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me, and she was smiling. It wasn't her usual warm, friendly smile. This was something else entirely. Something mean. "He came to my apartment last night after the rehearsal dinner," she continued, addressing the entire garden now like she was giving a performance. He said he'd been thinking about it for months, that he couldn't go through with marrying you when his heart belonged to someone else, to me. He said he'd always felt a connection with me, that he was only marrying you because it was expected, but that he couldn't live a lie anymore. The silence was deafening. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, could feel my carefully applied makeup starting to run as tears I couldn't control began to fall. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not like this. Not with Sarah, who I trusted more than anyone in the world. "That's not true," David said, his voice louder now, desperate. "Sarah, I don't know what kind of sick joke this is, but..." "Show them the texts," Sarah interrupted, pulling out her phone. "Show everyone the messages you sent me, or I will." I felt the world tilting beneath me. The 150 guests were watching this unfold like it was a soap opera, and I was the unwitting star of the most humiliating moment of my life. My wedding day, the day I'd planned for months, dreamed about for years, was being destroyed in real time by the person I'd trusted most. But then something strange happened. Through the shock and the pain, I felt a spark of something else. Anger. Because something about Sarah's story didn't add up. David had been with me until after midnight last night. We'd said goodbye at my hotel room door after the rehearsal dinner, where he'd kissed me goodnight and told me he couldn't wait to marry me in the morning. When could he have possibly gone to Sarah's apartment? And there was something else. Something about the way Sarah was standing, the way she was performing this moment. She looked prepared, like she'd rehearsed this. "Sarah," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If David came to your apartment last night, what time was it?" For just a split second, she hesitated. "Around 1 a.m., she said quickly. I nodded slowly. "And what did he tell you exactly?" She launched into a detailed account of this supposed confession, describing how David had poured his heart out to her, how he'd said he'd always been attracted to her, how he'd kissed her and told her they should run away together. She painted a vivid picture, full of romantic movie dialogue and dramatic gestures. And as she spoke, I realized two things. First, she was lying. David had been with me until 12:30, and his groomsmen had dragged him to his hotel room right after that for one last beer. I knew because Emma had texted me updates all night, worried that the guys would keep him out too late. Second, Sarah had completely underestimated me. "That's a beautiful story, Sarah," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the garden. The tears had stopped, and I could feel something like steel settling in my spine. Really moving, very detailed. She looked pleased, thinking she'd convinced me. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I couldn't let you make this mistake." "Oh, I'm not making a mistake," I said, reaching for my phone, which I'd tucked into a hidden pocket in my dress for emergencies. "The only mistake was mine, for trusting you." I turned to face our guests, all of whom were staring at this surreal scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Since we're apparently sharing phone messages today, I think you all deserve to see the whole truth." Sarah's face went white. "What are you talking about?" But I was already connecting my phone to the portable speaker system we'd set up for the ceremony music. Within seconds, I'd pulled up the screenshots I'd been saving for 3 weeks, the ones I'd hoped I'd never have to use. 3 weeks ago, I announced to the garden full of people, I started getting some interesting messages. From people who care about me, people who thought I should know what my maid of honor was really saying behind my back. The first screenshot appeared on my phone screen, and I held it up so the people in the front rows could see. It was a text conversation between Sarah and her coworker, Kelly, who happened to be friends with my cousin. Sarah: "Ugh, another wedding planning session with the bride-to-be. I swear she gets more basic every day." Kelly: "Lol, why are you her maid of honor if you hate it so much?" Sarah: "Because I'm not missing the chance to watch this train wreck up close. Plus, David is way too good for her. Someone needs to save him from making the biggest mistake of his life." The gasps from the crowd were audible now. I could see my mom standing up, her face a mask of fury. Sarah was shaking her head, saying, "That's not... I never." But her voice was drowned out by the murmurs of the guests. "But wait," I said, swiping to the next screenshot. "There's more." This one was from Sarah's Instagram DMs with someone I didn't recognize, but the context was clear enough. Sarah: "I'm literally at her dress fitting right now, and she looks like a cupcake. I can't believe David is going through with this. I've been dropping hints for months that he could do better." Unknown. Have you told her how you feel about him? Sarah, God, no. But after the wedding implodes, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. I've been the perfect supportive friend for years. He'll realize what was right in front of him all along. The silence in the garden was complete now, except for my voice. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. This next one is my personal favorite, I said, my voice getting stronger with each revelation. This is from 2 weeks ago, Sarah. 2 weeks ago, when you were helping me address invitations and telling me how happy you were for me. I swiped to a text thread between Sarah and someone named Alex, who I now realized must be her ex-boyfriend from college. Sarah, Operation Speak Now or Forever. Hold Your Peace is officially in motion. LOL. Alex, you're actually going to object at her wedding? That's insane, Sarah. Not object exactly, but I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person she really is. And what kind of person David could have instead. I've got it all planned out. She'll be humiliated, he'll see her true colors, and I'll be the shoulder he cries on. Alex, what if it backfires? Sarah, it won't. I know her better than anyone. She'll crumble like she always does when things get hard, and David will finally see that I'm the one who's always been there for him. The crowd was no longer silent. People were talking now, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. I could hear David's brother saying, "What the hell is wrong with this woman?" And my college roommate shouting, "Sarah, how could you do this?" But Sarah wasn't done fighting. "Those are fake," she cried, her voice shrill now. She made those up. She's so jealous and insecure that she can't handle the truth about David's feelings. Fake, I repeated, and I actually smiled. Sarah, honey, you have always underestimated me. I held up my phone again, but this time instead of a screenshot, I played an audio recording. Sarah's voice filled the garden, clear as day. I swear, if I have to listen to her practice those stupid vows one more time, I'm going to lose it. David, you make me want to be the best version of myself. Gag me. I could write better vows in my sleep. And honestly, I think I'd be better at being his wife too. I understand him in ways she never will. The voice on the recording was unmistakably Sarah's. And sitting right next to her in the recording was another familiar voice, her sister Jenny, who was sitting in the third row and had just gone completely pale. Sarah, you can't keep thinking like this. It's not healthy, Jenny's voice said on the recording. Why not? I've been in love with David since the day she introduced us. I just never made a move because I thought she'd get over him like she gets over everyone. But now they're getting married, and I can't just sit back and watch her ruin both their lives. I stopped the recording. The garden was so quiet I could hear leaves rustling in the breeze. That was recorded 6 days ago, Sarah. 6 days ago, when you came to my final dress fitting and told me I looked like a princess. Sarah was crying now. Ugly tears that were ruining her carefully applied makeup. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage at being caught. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. I love him. I've always loved him. You don't deserve him. You don't appreciate what you have. And that's when I realized the full scope of what she'd done. This wasn't just about David. This was about her feeling entitled to my entire life. You're right about one thing, Sarah, I said, my voice calm now, steady. I don't understand. I don't understand how someone I loved like a sister could hate me so much that she'd try to destroy the happiest day of my life. I don't understand how you could stand next to me for months, helping me plan this wedding while secretly plotting to ruin it. I turned to address the guests one more time. There's one more thing you all should know. Sarah didn't just plan to humiliate me today. She's been trying to sabotage my relationship with David for months. I swiped to one final screenshot, this one from just last week. This is a message Sarah sent to David's ex-girlfriend, Rachel, who lives in California now. She told Rachel that David had been asking about her, that he seemed unhappy with me, and that maybe Rachel should call him to check in before the wedding. She was hoping Rachel would cause drama, maybe even show up today to object. I looked directly at Sarah, who was now openly sobbing. The only reason I know about this is because Rachel thought it was weird and called David directly to ask what was going on. That's when we realized someone was playing games with our relationship. David stepped forward then, his face a mask of disgust and anger. Sarah, I have never, not once, given you any indication that I was interested in you romantically. I have never been to your apartment alone. I have never sent you inappropriate messages, and I sure as hell didn't come to see you last night." His voice was shaking with fury. "Last night, after I said goodnight to my fiancé, I went to my hotel room with my groomsmen, where we stayed until 3 a.m. playing poker and talking about how excited I was to marry the woman I love." He turned to face the guests. Jake, Tom, Marcus, and Danny were all there, every minute from 12:30 until 3 a.m. Anyone wants to confirm that? Feel free to ask them. 4 hands went up in the crowd, David's groomsmen nodding vigorously. Sarah was trapped, and she knew it. But she made one last desperate attempt. "Fine, maybe I made up the part about last night. But I wasn't lying about David's feelings. I know he loves me. I can see it in the way he looks at me, the way he talks to me. We have a connection that she'll never understand." That's when David did something that shocked everyone, including me. He laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a laugh of pure, bewildered disbelief. "Sarah," he said, shaking his head, "I barely tolerate you. I've been polite to you for 3 years because you're my fiancé's best friend, but honestly, you make me uncomfortable. You stand too close. You touch my arm when you talk to me. You find excuses to be alone with me. I've mentioned it to my friends multiple times because it makes me so uncomfortable." He gestured toward his groomsmen again. "Ask any of them. I've complained about your behavior for years. I was actually planning to ask you to talk to Sarah about boundaries after we got back from our honeymoon." The humiliation on Sarah's face was complete. She looked around the garden wildly, searching for a single sympathetic face, but found none. Even her own sister was staring at her with disgust. "You're all believing her lies," Sarah screamed, her composure completely gone now. "She's turned you all against me. I've been nothing but a good friend to her." That's when my mother stood up. My mom is 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighs maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. But when she's angry, she's terrifying. And she was furious. "Sarah Elizabeth Morrison," she said, her voice cutting through Sarah's hysteria like a blade. "I have known you since you were 7 years old. I have fed you, housed you, loved you like my own daughter. And this is how you repay that love? By trying to destroy my daughter's wedding day?" Mom walked closer to Sarah, and I could see her hands shaking with rage. "You stood in my kitchen 2 weeks ago and helped me make cookies for the welcome bags. You hugged me and thanked me for treating you like family. And all the while, you were planning this. This attack on a woman who has loved you unconditionally for 20 years. She turned to address the crowd. "I want everyone here to know that Sarah is no longer welcome in our family. She's no longer welcome in our home. And if I ever see her near my daughter again, I will call the police." The finality in my mother's voice was unmistakable. And looking around the garden, I could see that she wasn't alone in her sentiment. People were looking at Sarah with expressions ranging from disgust to pity, but no one was looking at her with sympathy or support. Sarah made one last desperate play. She turned to David with tears streaming down her face and said, "David, please, you know me. You know I'm not a bad person. I love you so much it made me crazy. Can't you understand that?" David looked at her for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Sarah, what you call love isn't love at all. Love doesn't try to destroy someone else's happiness. Love doesn't lie and manipulate and scheme. What you're describing is obsession, and it's not healthy." He took my hand and squeezed it. "I love this woman," he said, gesturing to me. "I have loved her completely and exclusively since the day I met her. There has never been anyone else for me, and there never will be. I'm sorry if you misinterpreted my politeness for something more, but that's on you, not me." Sarah stared at him for another moment, then let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She pushed past the people in her row and ran toward the mansion, her bridesmaid dress trailing behind her like a flag of surrender. And then, in the strangest turn of events, in what had already been the strangest wedding in history, the entire garden full of guests began to applaud. It started slowly with David's brother and then my college roommates, but within seconds everyone was clapping and cheering. Someone in the back shouted, "That's how you handle a psycho!" And someone else yelled, "Best wedding ever!" I looked around at all these people, our family and friends who had come to celebrate our love, and realized that they were celebrating something else now. They were celebrating the fact that love and truth had won over jealousy and deception. Pastor Mike stepped forward with a huge grin on his face. "Well," he said, his voice carrying over the applause, "I've been officiating weddings for 23 years, and I can honestly say that's a first. But if we're all finished with the objections, I believe we have a wedding to complete." The laughter and cheers that erupted were deafening. What happened next was the most surreal and wonderful hour of my life. With Sarah gone, it was like a dark cloud had lifted from the entire celebration. The energy in the garden was electric. Everyone felt like they'd witnessed something incredible, like they'd been part of a story they'd be telling for years. David and I exchanged vows, and mine were even more meaningful now because I was saying them with complete certainty that this man loved me and only me. When I promised to stand by him through any storm, to trust him completely, and to build a life based on honesty and communication, I meant every word more than I ever had before. His vows made me cry, the good kind of tears this time. He promised to protect our relationship from anyone who tried to harm it, to never give me reason to doubt his love, and to spend every day proving that I was the only woman for him. When Pastor Mike pronounced us husband and wife, the kiss we shared felt like a victory celebration. The reception was unlike anything I could have imagined. Instead of polite small talk and carefully choreographed moments, it was a genuine celebration of surviving something together and coming out stronger. People kept coming up to us to say things like, "That was the most intense thing I've ever witnessed," and "You handled that like an absolute boss." My new sister-in-law Emma made a toast that brought the house down. To David and my new sister, who just proved that love conquers all, including psychotic bridesmaids. Even the vendors were talking about it. Our photographer said she'd never shot anything like it and asked permission to use some of the photos, appropriately cropped, in her portfolio as an example of authentic moments. Our DJ said he'd never seen a crowd more ready to party than people who'd just watched justice being served in real time. The best part, though, was dancing with my husband to our first dance song while all our favorite people cheered us on. During the bridge, David pulled me close and whispered, "I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I'm proud of how you handled it. You were incredible." "We handled it," I corrected him. "Together." And we had. We'd faced the worst thing I could have imagined happening at our wedding, and we'd come through it not just unscathed, but stronger. Here's what I haven't told you yet, the part that makes the story even crazier. I had known about Sarah's feelings for weeks, not about her plan to disrupt the wedding. That part was a complete shock. But I'd known she was in love with David, and I'd known she resented me for getting him when she felt like she deserved him more. It started with little comments that didn't sit right with me. "David's so funny. I love his sense of humor." David and I have such similar taste in movies. David really gets my jokes in a way most guys don't. Then there were the physical things, standing too close to him, touching his arm when she talked, finding excuses to hug him that lasted just a beat too long. David noticed it too and mentioned it to me several times. "Is it just me, or is Sarah a little intense lately?" he'd ask. We'd talked about it and decided that Sarah was probably just feeling left out now that David and I were getting serious, and that she'd adjust once she found someone of her own. But 3 weeks before the wedding, my cousin showed me those screenshots from Sarah's conversations with her coworker. And then other people started coming forward with things Sarah had said to them. Nasty comments about me, inappropriate questions about David, hints that our relationship wasn't as solid as it appeared. I spent those 3 weeks in a weird state of denial and preparation. Part of me kept thinking that surely Sarah wouldn't actually do anything to hurt me. We'd been friends for 20 years. She'd seen me through heartbreaks and failures and victories. She'd held my hair back when I was sick and driven me to the hospital when I broke my wrist. Surely that history meant something. But another part of me, the part that had learned to trust my instincts, was preparing for the worst. I screenshotted every piece of evidence that was sent to me. I made sure David was aware of everything I'd learned, so he wouldn't be blindsided if something happened. I even had a conversation with my parents and David's parents about the situation, just in case. What I never imagined was that she'd be bold enough to actually stand up during the ceremony and try to destroy everything in such a public way. When it happened, when she stood up and made her announcement, my first emotion was disappointment. Not shock. I'd been half expecting something, though not exactly that. Disappointment that someone I'd loved so much had chosen to be so cruel. But my second emotion was anger. Pure, righteous anger at the audacity of trying to ruin not just my wedding day, but my relationship, my reputation, and my happiness. And that anger gave me the strength to fight back in a way I never could have if I'd been completely caught off guard. It's been 3 months since the wedding, and people are still talking about it. It's become legend in our friend group, and several people have asked me to write down what happened so they can share the story accurately when people ask about it. Sarah disappeared completely after the wedding. She moved out of her apartment and, according to mutual acquaintances, moved back in with her parents in another state. She deleted all her social media accounts, changed her phone number, and as far as I know, hasn't contacted any of our mutual friends. Her sister Jenny apologized to me profusely and told me that Sarah had always been jealous of me, even when we were kids. She used to complain that you were prettier, smarter, funnier, that people liked you more, Jenny said. I thought she'd grown out of it, but apparently it just got worse over the years. The hardest part for me has been grieving the friendship I thought I had. For 20 years, I believed Sarah was one of the most important people in my life. Finding out that she'd spent at least some of that time resenting me and plotting against me has made me question every memory, every shared moment. But my therapist has helped me understand that the friendship I experienced was real, even if Sarah's feelings were complicated. The good times we shared, the support she gave me, the laughter and the adventures, those things happened, even if her motivations were sometimes unhealthy. People are complex, my therapist said. It's possible for someone to genuinely care about you and also be jealous of you. It's possible for someone to want to support you and also want to sabotage you. The human heart is capable of holding contradictory emotions. That doesn't excuse what Sarah did, but it helps me make sense of how someone who was such a big part of my life could do something so hurtful. David and I are doing amazingly well. If anything, what happened at our wedding brought us closer together. We learned that we could face a crisis as a team, that we could trust each other completely, even when everything around us was chaos. We're also more careful now about the people we let into our inner circle. We've realized that just because someone has been in your life for a long time doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. We pay attention to how people talk about others, how they handle jealousy and disappointment, how they react when things don't go their way. But we haven't become cynical or closed off. We still believe in friendship and loyalty and love. We just believe in trusting but verifying, as they say. If there's a moral to this crazy story, it's this: trust your instincts, prepare for the worst, and never let anyone else control the narrative of your life. When people started showing me evidence of Sarah's true feelings, I could have confronted her privately. I could have uninvited her from the wedding. I could have tried to handle it quietly to avoid drama. But I'm glad I didn't. Because what Sarah did, standing up in front of 150 people and trying to publicly humiliate me with lies, required a public response. She was banking on my being too shocked, too hurt, too embarrassed to fight back effectively. She was wrong. I've received dozens of messages from friends and strangers who heard about what happened, telling me they admired how I handled the situation. But more than that, I've heard from people who said my story inspired them to stand up for themselves in their own difficult situations. One woman wrote to tell me that watching me refuse to be a victim gave her the courage to leave an abusive marriage. Another said that seeing me trust in my relationship, despite someone trying to undermine it, helped her work through her own trust issues with her boyfriend. That means more to me than any compliment about how badass I was or how epic my takedown of Sarah was. Because I didn't set out to destroy Sarah. I set out to protect the truth, protect my relationship, and protect my own dignity. The fact that Sarah was humiliated in the process was a consequence of her own actions, not my goal. I would have been content to have a quiet, beautiful wedding with the people I love. Sarah is the one who decided to make it a public spectacle, and I simply refused to let her control how that spectacle ended. One funny side note: our wedding photos are absolutely wild. Our photographer captured everything, and I mean everything. There are photos of Sarah standing up and pointing at me dramatically. There are photos of the guests' shocked faces. There are photos of me holding up my phone with the screenshots. There are photos of David's expression of complete bewilderment and rage. At first, I thought we'd have to throw away half our wedding photos because they documented the most traumatic part of the day. But looking at them now, I'm actually glad we have them. They tell the complete story of our wedding day. Not just the pretty parts, but the part where we fought for our love and won. My favorite photo from the entire day is one taken right after Sarah ran away. David and I are standing at the altar, holding hands, and we're both looking at each other with these expressions of pure relief and love. Behind us, you can see all our guests applauding. It's a perfect capture of the moment when we realized we'd made it through the storm together. We ended up creating 2 wedding albums, one with just the traditional romantic shots for our parents and grandparents, and one with the complete story for ourselves. The second album is definitely more interesting. Since this whole thing happened, I've had several engaged friends ask me for advice about dealing with jealous friends or family members. Here's what I tell them. First, if someone in your wedding party makes you feel uncomfortable or says things that don't sit right with you, pay attention to that feeling. Don't dismiss it as pre-wedding jitters or stress. Your instincts are usually right. Second, if people start bringing you evidence that someone close to you is talking badly about you or your relationship, don't ignore it out of loyalty. Real loyalty goes both ways. Third, have a support system that extends beyond just your wedding party. Make sure there are people in your life who you can trust completely, who will have your back no matter what. Fourth, remember that your wedding day is about you and your partner, not about managing other people's feelings or protecting other people's egos. If someone is trying to make your day about them, shut it down. And finally, trust your partner. If someone is trying to convince you that your relationship isn't what you think it is, and your partner is showing you consistently that they love and respect you, believe your partner. Don't let other people's jealousy or dysfunction poison something beautiful. The aftermath of our wedding has had effects I never could have predicted. Several people in our friend group have reevaluated their own relationships and friendships. 2 couples who were at our wedding ended up breaking up within a month because watching what happened made them realize their own relationships weren't built on the kind of trust and honesty they wanted. On the flip side, 3 couples who were at our wedding got engaged within the next 6 months. Apparently, watching David and me fight for our relationship and come out stronger inspired them to take their own relationships to the next level. My parents told me that what happened at our wedding made them proud of how David and I handled ourselves as a team, but it also made them realize they needed to be more careful about who they trust. My mom said she'd always thought of Sarah as a second daughter, and finding out how Sarah really felt about me was devastating for her too. David's parents had a similar reaction. His mom told me she'd always liked Sarah, and had even hoped she might end up with one of David's single friends. Finding out about Sarah's obsession with David made her feel like she'd been completely blind to what was happening right in front of her. But the most unexpected ripple effect has been in my professional life. I work in marketing, and somehow the story of how I handled the wedding situation got back to my boss. She told me that watching me stay calm under pressure and turn a potentially devastating situation into a victory made her realize I had leadership qualities she hadn't recognized before. I got a promotion 6 weeks after the wedding. My boss specifically mentioned that she was impressed by how I'd managed a crisis with grace and strategic thinking. I never thought my wedding drama would help my career, but apparently defending yourself publicly and effectively is considered a marketable skill. If I could go back and change what happened at my wedding, would I? That's a question I've thought about a lot. Part of me wishes I could have had the peaceful, drama-free wedding I'd originally planned. Part of me wishes I'd never had to learn that someone I loved so much was capable of such cruelty. But if I'm being completely honest, I wouldn't change it. Because what happened at my wedding taught me things about myself that I never would have learned otherwise. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I learned that I can think clearly and act decisively even when my world is falling apart. I learned that I can stand up for myself and the people I love without losing my integrity or stooping to someone else's level. I also learned that David is exactly the man I thought he was. In the moment when our relationship was under attack, he didn't hesitate to defend me and defend us. He didn't waver or doubt or try to find a middle ground. He stood firmly on my side, and that meant everything to me. Most importantly, I learned that real love can survive anything. The love David and I have isn't fragile or dependent on perfect circumstances. It's strong enough to weather storms, honest enough to face hard truths, and deep enough to grow stronger from challenges. Sarah tried to destroy our wedding day, but she actually gave us a gift. She gave us the chance to prove to ourselves and to everyone who matters to us that our love is real, strong, and unshakable. I know some people think I was too harsh in how I handled Sarah's objection. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that some people think I should have been more compassionate, that I should have tried to understand her feelings and handle the situation more privately. To those people, I say this: Sarah had 20 years to talk to me about her feelings. She had months during wedding planning to express her concerns about my relationship with David. She had countless opportunities to handle her jealousy and obsession in healthy, private ways. Instead, she chose to wait until the most public, most important moment of my life to try to destroy me. She chose to lie and manipulate and scheme. She chose to try to humiliate me in front of everyone I love most. I don't owe anyone compassion when they're actively trying to harm me. I don't owe anyone privacy when they've made a public attack on my character and my relationship. And I sure as hell don't owe anyone the chance to destroy my happiness while I stand there and take it quietly. What I did at my wedding wasn't revenge. It was self-defense. It was protecting the truth. It was refusing to be a victim. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because at the end of the day, it was my wedding day, my relationship, and my choice how to handle someone trying to destroy both. Sarah thought she could write the story of my most important day, but she forgot one crucial detail. I was always going to be the main character in my own life story, and main characters don't let the villain win. David and I just celebrated our 3-month anniversary, and we're happier than ever. We're planning our first Christmas as a married couple, talking about buying a house next year, and looking forward to building the life we've always wanted together. Sarah is somewhere in another state, dealing with the consequences of her choices. I don't wish her ill, but I don't think about her much anymore either. She chose to remove herself from my story, and I'm okay with that. My story now is about building a marriage based on love, trust, and honesty. It's about surrounding myself with people who genuinely want the best for me. It's about being grateful for the man who chose to love me completely and defend that love when it was attacked. It's about knowing that whatever challenges David and I face in the future, we can handle them together. Because we've already proven that our love is stronger than jealousy, stronger than deception, and stronger than anyone who tries to tear us apart. And that, more than any perfect wedding photos or flawless ceremony, is the best possible start to a marriage.